What is the most statistically improbable thing that has ever happened to you? When I was at university, I would quite often get a taxi ride after a night out from a nice old man nicknamed Grandpa. He had Grandpa on his taxi license and had business cards with Grandpa on them, etc. He would always give you cheap rides and come whenever you called. Anyway, 4 years or so passed without me getting a ride from him. I had heard rumors that he had died, which was quite saddening. About a month or so ago, a couple mates and I were waiting to get picked up by a taxi when I decided to tell them about the story of Grandpa. So eventually I finished my story and our taxi arrived, with none other than Grandpa at the wheel. I won a Frosted Flakes sweepstakes competition about 10 years ago. I was a kid and my mom filled out the form that was on the back of the box and sent it in, and I ended up winning an all expenses paid trip to California, a PlayStation 2, and a shitload of money amongst other things. I always had thought sweepstakes were a scam and companies never followed through, but it turns out there actually are winners. When I was in the Navy, I was stationed in Virginia, but my ship had to make a stop in Mayport, Florida. My dad works for Lockheed Martin in Maryland and occasionally works on ships in various ports throughout the country. He was on a business trip and neither of us knew the other was in Florida. When I was walking into a Carrabba's to get some food for dinner, he was walking out. If I had gotten there 30 seconds later, neither of us would have known about it. But it just so happened that through crazy coincidence we ended up having some drinks together and having a great story to tell for years to come. I had a friend in college who had a rich uncle. He was pretty good at basketball by Midwest white guy standards. His uncle told him that if he could throw the basketball over the house and make it through the hoop on the garage, he would buy him a Corvette. This was when he was 15 years old or so. He did it. One try. And made the shot. The rich uncle swore that the day the nephew graduated college, he would buy him a brand new Corvette. Flash forward to when I know him in college. He got a Lexus SUV instead, but definitely made good on his promise. Earlier in the day my friend stuffed my pocket full of spoons when I wasn't looking. And later I was talking to two girls I kind of knew when they say they need to go get a spoon as a prop for a project we were doing. I then produce a spoon from my pocket and give it to them, to which I receive a very bewildered look. Obviously I do the most logical thing and silently walk away. They won't talk to me anymore. In the cafeteria in high school we had circular tables. One day a buddy of mine threw a French fry at me jokingly. After it hit me and fell to the floor, I picked up said French fry and threw it back at him. When I threw it, he was about to take a drink from his soda. The fry flew just under the cup and into his mouth literally milliseconds before he took the sip. The look on his face as he realized what had just happened and how he spit the drink and fry back out was priceless. I was 19 and driving home from work in the afternoon. Out of nowhere this guy slammed into the back of my car and it slammed me into the car in front of me. The guy who hit me decided to take off, and being the hot-headed 19-year-old I was, I followed him while taking my brass knuckles out of the glove compartment. I phoned the police and told them what happened as I was tailing him to get his license plate number. I got the number and the police told me to head back to the scene of the accident. I was driving back then. Out of nowhere an SUV slammed into my backside. Some woman was on her phone and didn't see me. 3 car accidents in about 4 minutes time. I got out of my car in the middle of the 6-lane road and screamed, "Is this really happening?" Double quote. My dad was once in a pool on top of a high-rise in downtown Chicago playing catch with my little brother. My dad throws the football to my brother. His wedding ring flies off and falls into the streets of downtown Chicago. My dad goes down to look for it and finds it within 2 minutes. Then a few years later, my dad was shoveling snow in our yard and realized his wedding ring was missing. He accepted that he lost it and was very disappointed. Then during the spring, once the snow melted, he found the ring in our front yard. Several years ago I went to San Francisco on business and decided to look up an old friend. But upon arriving realized I didn't have his phone number. So I called a mutual friend who lives in DC and asked for it. Whereupon he told me he was also in San Francisco visiting that very same friend. 3 years later I was in San Francisco on business and decided to give the same friend a call, but realized I had since lost his number yet again. So, once again I called our mutual friend in DC. And once again he was randomly out in SF that weekend visiting that same friend. In the intervening years, it was the only time either of us was in SF. So it's not as though we were both just there all the time. Close bracket. My 7th grade math teacher had one of those tiny basketball hoops hanging on the front chalkboard. He was a pretty cool guy. So one day we spent an entire class period trying to get the little plastic ball through the hoop. From the middle of the room, a few people could make it. But from the back nobody made a shot in 20 minutes. Enter me, an awkward uncoordinated kid sitting in the back row. My teacher looks at me and says, "Class, if Carilo 232 can make this shot, you all get 100s on the test you took yesterday." He tosses me the ball. Swish. Asterisk. Hero of the day. Felt good. I was in the academic Olympics in high school, and we were one of the worst teams in the district. I blame poor funding. Or something that's not me. Anyways, we're up against a team slightly better than us. But we were on a roll. In round 2/3 towards the end of the round, we got the first question. So we got first try on the bonus question. Bonus questions are worth 12 points. And almost always were 3 or 4 parts, where you could get partial credit. However, this one was a 1-part question. All or nothing. It was some ridiculously hard question where it was a math problem, with different questions as each variable. i.e. number of carbon atoms in glucose, times Michael Jordan's basketball jersey number, minus the year BC that Julius Caesar died, etc. Except they were all so hard. None of us knew any of them. At the last second I buzzed in to guess. No penalty. Might as well, and sheepishly said 5. With a shrug of my shoulders. The judges were silent for 3 seconds before sputtering "that's correct." And the entire place exploded with laughter. In the end we won the game by 8 points. So I say, since the answer could have been any number in the universe for all we know, I had a 1/infinity chance of guessing something. In short, I did the impossible. Mine would be being born period. Years ago I read the memoirs of my great-grandfather, who fought in World War I. Apparently he should have died on 3 different occasions. Once while marching to the front. An artillery shell exploded right in front of him. He got a scratch while 5 guys to his left and right were killed and another 20 very seriously injured. Later on, he went over the top with a whole division. He was one of 2, out of about 8,000, to make it back. And then towards the end of the war, he was gassed with mustard gas. Most of his trenchmates were killed or later died of it. He was the only one able to get a piss-soaked rag over his mouth and nose in time. He crawled to safety using only one eye, keeping the other closed. Within a few hours the eye that he used went completely blind, as he knew it would. But because he had kept the other eye shut he retained vision in it until he died at the ripe old age of 92. Worked for a healthcare company's IT department. We got a phone call from a pissed off doctor who wasn't happy with the temporary password he was given when he forgot his password. The PW was FKDKTA. We scrambled to find out who pulled the prank and it turned out the password was generated based on the nanoseconds from a specific date in the 70s. Total coincidence. My sister was married to a man that was a cheating loser druggie. I was on the phone with her and she was telling me about a fight they were having. He beeped in and she told me she would call me right back. I told my husband that the only way my sister would ever get away from that man was if he just died. Her husband died while on the phone with her. His Jeep flipped and he was thrown from the vehicle, landing on his head. When the wreck occurred the phone went dead and she thought he had hung up on her and was angry. She called me back and we continued to talk until the police arrived to let her know he had died. He died on his way home 100 feet from where they lived. My sister-in-law called me a witch and said she had a list for me. A few of my friends got a taxi back from a night of drinking in town. And because we all live in the same area, got out at the same place. Two of us start walking back because we live close by each other, and a car goes past and throws an egg but misses us and breaks up on the floor. Anyway, we carry on walking about a mile or two down the road, and my friend puts his hand in his jacket pocket and pulls out an egg. Unbroken, so when we got egged by the car, instead of being a terrible shot, my friend caught it in his jacket pocket without even knowing. Was pretty amazing, and what I imagine a once in a lifetime event. In one of my college classes, the professor told the class that whomever could locate the page in the textbook that had a little blurb about a study conducted by our school district, Washoe County, would win a bag of peanut M&Ms. I hadn't purchased the textbook yet. So while everyone shuffled through their books, I just guessed out loud 674, which, for whatever reason, has always been my go-to number in stupid guessing games. Turns out, I was correct. The book was over 1,000 pages long. So I guess I/1200-ish isn't exactly improbable. But it's still a long shot. I was kind of bummed they were peanut butter M&Ms though. Not mine, but my dad's. He was retiring and clearing everything out of his office as he was closing his practice. His favorite picture of my stepmom needed to be removed from the frame so he could have it digitized. Having been in the frame so long, it was sticking to the glass. When the picture finally came off, it slipped. Fell from however high a 6'3" man would be holding everything to remove it. And fell perfectly into the slit of the shredder, which was on automatic on. Shredded the picture as my dad stood there in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the event that took place just happened, and emotional loss of the photograph. I once went fishing as a teenager. I caught something on my line and eagerly began to reel it in, hoping to see a big old fish. To my surprise and confusion, what I found on the end of my hook was another fishing line that had somehow become snagged on my original hook. At the end of the fishing line that I had caught on my hook, there was a hook. And on that hook there was a big ol' fish. I still can't really comprehend the odds of that happening. But there it is. Someone had clearly caught this fish at an earlier time. But for whatever reason, the line had come off the rod and the fish had gotten away. It would have been less weird if the dumbass fish had taken my bait too. But no, I somehow caught the line that held the hook that caught the fish. Wasn't me, but my sister. She was driving to work on a highway. A semi-truck in front of her ran over a big piece of plywood that was in the road. This caused the plywood to go flying right at her vehicle. And it wedged itself under the hood of her car instead of hitting the windshield. You could recreate that event 1,000 times and I don't think it would work out like that. She was very lucky that day. Not me. But my dad has survived a lot of ridiculous things. 1. He was struck by lightning and lived. Not only did he live, but he was fine. He didn't even have to go to the hospital. He was just a little terrified and had a headache or something. 2. He survived what's known as a widowmaker heart attack. It's much less common to survive than to be killed by them. 3. He's accident prone. Just in recent memory he had some kind of mouth infection that put him in the hospital for a week. He rolled a golf cart, luckily not injuring himself or anyone else. He has lots of things like this happen to him. He's the exception to all the rules. I was in perfect health at 23, but had a stroke. Pretty harsh one. Was in a coma for 2 days. When I woke up at the 8,000 employee hospital, they told me I was the first guy ever at my age to come down with something like that. They ran me through every test they had for 3 days and concluded I had a blood clot in my leg. Somehow. Sent me back home. And 3 weeks later it happened again. A few years back, I was reading the Aragorn series on vacation and finished book 2. I really wanted to get the next one. But I was in a proper tourist trap that mostly sold towels and beach balls. Still, I went down to one of the shops. And next to postcards and pamphlets was a single copy of book 3. I still can't believe it. My girlfriend and I bought some couches on Craigslist 3 years ago and they were never comfortable. The day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. I had some new couches delivered to our house. As we moved out the old couches to make room for the new couches, she slips and drops her end of the couch. A ring pops out of the couch. I had been engagement ring shopping for the first time in my life that very week. I had anxiety about the price cost of the ring. I wanted to get something awesome but did not have the funds. The ring that popped out of the couch we had been sitting on for 3 years had massive 2.5C diamonds surrounded by 28 smaller diamonds. She was 29 years old. We got engaged that day and got married on the 21st of December 2012. Thoughts become things? I don't know about statistics, but I think this is interesting. When I was in the Air Force I worked on F-15s in Nevada. I became best friends with a co-worker there. I knew he was from TX, as am I, and that he lived in a town outside Houston. Years go by and we both separate from the military and go to school at Tamu. We were bullshitting one night about where we grew up, and I told him that he probably never heard of the town. I humored him and told him do it. Turns out, he spent a few years living there as well. Gets better. Started talking about which house and years spent there. Long story short, I fucking lived next to and played with this kid when I was little. We are still friends.